March 11th, 2019. Call the FinCom meeting to order. All rise for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mike, thank you for the advanced copies of some of this stuff. I know there are members that appreciate that. I don't know if it helps at all in the future to get that active for the few people who may actually be watching. I don't know. I myself, I'm good with the front page and not specific salary type stuff. That's me. I know before we begin, the town moderator wanted to say a few words to us, so if we could do that first.
Hi, I know you're busy, so I'll be really quick. And the reason that I came tonight is that a few months ago, the town manager at the end of one of your meetings talked about an issue with a member and comments on social media. And that night made the statement that because of comments on social media, that member should resign. And I came tonight to say that I 100% disagree with the town manager. Unfortunately, we live in a world where even moderators and town managers can have opinions and can state them. But I thought it was really important because the statement was made that, first of all, let me tell you, I didn't like the comments that the member made on social media. I thought that they were incorrect. But then again, unfortunately, and I can't seem to fix this, everybody in town won't always agree with me. And it just makes it very much harder. It would be much easier if they always did. But the problem is, even when I don't agree with it, I think it is wrong to come and to say that a member who says something on social media, a finance committee member, must resign because of that, because it's sort of against the policy. It works against the town. It questions. I'm telling you that as finance committee members, you are pretty much worthless as finance committee members if you don't have opinions. Your very job as finance committee members is to listen to the information presented to you, to form opinions, and to give those opinions to the town meeting to make sure that the town you make recommendations to the town meeting. That's why you exist. You're not like the police department or the accounting department or some other department of the town. You are the people who, because I appoint you or whoever's in the moderator's chair appoints you, you make these decisions, you do these things. I know that there are a lot of good members. I think every member of this committee is a good member, and some are more veteran than others. I'm not looking at Mr. Helmreich when I say that. And you do a good job of separating the politics from the business. I'm not so encumbered in my position that way. Come to think of it, I never have been. But it's good that you do that. But I do not enjoy having the integrity of this committee questioned in that manner. I don't think it's right. I think, if the selectman or the town manager, the selectman through the town manager or anybody has a problem, when the selectmen make an appointment of a Serpent rep who has had problems with finance committee, finance campaign allegations and things that have been done wrong, I didn't see the finance committee standing up and saying that, maybe some of the members of there should resign. That you may have liked it, you may not have liked it, you may not have even heard of it. But the fact of the matter remains that you're not always going to do everything that the town or people who run the town or people like me or other elected officials think is right. That's okay. If you're not breaking the law, if you're not being totally irresponsible, if you're not being racist, if all you're doing is giving your opinion, then that's what you need to do. And I do not want members of the Finance Committee feeling intimidated. It would be my pleasure and my hope that when all of you go home after Finance Committee meetings, or maybe the next day, that you talk to your neighbors, that you talk to your friends, that you express your opinions. If you don't express your opinions to other people, how in the world are they going to know what goes on at town meeting? Maybe there are issues where I wish you wouldn't express your opinion because maybe it doesn't agree with mine. But that's okay. That's the way the system works. You hold a unique position in town government. It's not the same as everyone else's. And I respect the fact that the committee works hard. I respect the fact that you understand that position. But I had calls and I had emails from people who said, you know, do we have a problem on the Finance Committee? Should people on the Finance Committee resign? No. We have no problems on the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee does a good job. And if there were problems on the Finance Committee as the appointing authority, I would be addressing them. And to all of you, I've talked to you all at different times about things, good, bad, and indifferent, raised issues, listened to complaints, and done all that. Nobody's perfect, except me, of course. But I just felt the need to come and state that there was nothing, in my opinion, that rose to the level that even got into the realm of discussion of a Finance Committee member resigning, and that I hope that you all continue to express your opinion. I hope that you go home and express your opinion. I hope you send emails to people. I hope you communicate in every way to give the information that you know, because frankly, if you don't do that, then you have no reason to serve as a committee. That's what you do, is you give opinions and you present those opinions to the town meeting. So that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to make it clear. I'll let you guys get back to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Mike?
We have the new director of the Recreation Commission here tonight, so I'd like to have her come up so you can meet her. And while Sharon is walking up here, Sharon Rice, by the way, just want to go over her budget. The part-time wages, same number of hours as was approved last year. And there's just a couple changes in the expenses. Electricity, we're in between power purchase agreements, so electricity has gone up. And also some repairs that Sharon has to make on equipment. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So the biggest thing is that the pavilion at the Everett Leonard Park is in a pretty severe state of disrepair. The building inspector went out there with us and identified several areas that really need to be taken care of. And I guess that this is the second year he's identified some of these issues and now has put new issues on there as well. So we've earmarked some money to do that, to keep the building structurally sound. There's a big hole in one side. I don't know the technical terms, I'm sorry, but on the opposite side of the building, it's all rotted. And so it's nothing dramatic, but it does need to be tended to because it's only getting worse. And we do need to update some equipment for the pool. One of the lifeguard chairs is broken. We're hoping we can repair it, but we might have to replace it, which is about $500. So things like that. Nothing too dramatic, but things that need to be tended to.
Mike, on the electricity, because that's what caught my eye when I read this earlier. On this one, we're stating massive increase in electricity, yet for this building, we're saying electricity expense has gone down. Why is there a difference?
Because of the solar facility on the Hill Street landfill, the credits are applied to the largest bills that the town has. So the high school, this building, street lights.
But is it the same contract that
Everyone,
covers all the
Right.
town buildings?
Yes.
It's just how you're allocating?
we get
paying
the,
what?
we're getting the credits from the Hill Street landfill.
Okay, okay. Aaron?
But but why, does that really explain why the massive increase?
The increase, as I said, is we're in between power purchase contracts. Our contract that the schools in the town had with Constellation Energy ended, and so now we're at the higher rate that everyone would pay if they were on National Grid.
So is what we're dealing with here what I find at home once every year or other year where that one bill shows up that's a little higher than the new one, and I realize, oh, time for me to look for my new supplier,
Well-
make sure I'm getting the best deal available.
Well, probably a little different because we actually went back out to bid and the bids came in really high, so we're going back out again.
Mike, do we have to budget by department for the electricity? Could we do it kind of like we do some of the other kind of aggregated items? You know, I'm just thinking, I don't remember seeing a line item for electricity at the fire department. It probably rolls up under this building, but it seems like rec, the dog officer, and a handful of other really small departments have these significant line items that are skewing their operating budget numbers year over year because the electricity is fluctuating. I don't know if we have to budget that way or if we just do because it's how we've always done it.
Separate entities, they're separate buildings. They're not contiguous.
I
think-
Let's figure out where that's coming from.
It has to be,
Senior center,
there's
for
a
example,
meter,
has a line item.
meter
for
on
electricity.
every
It's a
property.
separate building.
yeah, there's a meter on every property.
Meter on
so
every property.
It's allocated by meter. So each street light has a number, each building has a meter or multiple meters.
Right, but for budgeting purposes, we could have a line item in the budget called electricity, and we could break it out by location for
But-
everyone's different electric bills and look
Yeah.
at it that way.
You could, but it's, then everything would just get, you wouldn't have any control over it, so it's better to see what's being spent at the animal control, what's being spent at
Okay,
council on
that
aging.
makes sense.
Is this an indication my electric bill is gonna go up?
Not if you're on the aggregation,
I'm on the aggregation.
you should be okay.
So why is this not on the aggregation?
They won't let us get on the aggregation, it has to be private
Okay,
residents or businesses.
okay.
We thought we could get on the aggregation, that's why we had to go back out to bid.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Is that why there was, I guess for lack of better terms, a lag in between
Yeah.
this running out and? Thank you.
Thank you.
If you could skip through and get to the planning, because Paul Di Giuseppe, the Planning Economic Development Director, is also here tonight. And I know Paul wants to talk to you about some of the things that are happening at the Planning Department. Go ahead.
Good evening, and I'm very happy to be here. I know this is the first time I've presented in front of you all. In terms of the budget, you know, really, it's pretty much remained the same other than salary increase, which is actually consistent with the union contracts. But the non-personnel costs have remained the same from last year, with a couple changes, small changes within the items themselves, and if you wanted to talk about them. But a couple things I wanted to just mention, what we're working on as a town. First, we're getting very close to having our zoning map, which if you've seen, it's a hand-drawn map. We're working with the Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic Development District. We are just about ready to get that as a digital map, which is the first time we've had that in this town, which is a really significant achievement. My predecessor, Tabitha Harkin, had started it. I'm kind of fortunate to be here to see it through to its completion, but it's very important because oftentimes people come up to the office and they don't know what their zoning is, and so that we look at the map and it's right on the boundary between two different zoning districts, and we have to look at how the road might be curving, whatnot. So this will help take care of that. It'll provide us a lot more certainty. Another big initiative that we are launching soon is the town's master plan. Our current one was adopted in 1998, which, when you think about it, it's 21 years old, so it could go to the liquor store. But anyway, that's a bad joke. But it's 21 years old, and a plan that runs that's that old really isn't effective. So we are contracting with the Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic Development District to update the new plan. Some good news, though, is we've applied through them for the first year. This will be a 2-year project, but we've received a $20,000 direct technical local assistance grant, which we are eligible next year as well to get up to $20,000 or $30,000 for it. And we've also received $30,000 from the state's Department of Revenue for a community compact grant. So that's funding that can go a long way toward creating this plan, which we expect will take roughly 18 to 24 months. But it'll cover items such as how our land is used, economic development, housing. But it's a policy document, but it's asking the public what's the direction for the future of Norton. So it's exciting that we'll do it. We are going to have a plan that has a lot of public outreach as well. And then finally, I just want to announce Wednesday over at Yale Elementary School, we will be rolling out a draft of the Village Center plan that we had been working on for about a year. So that'll be at 6:30 at Yale Elementary School, and hopefully you all can come out and see the plan and talk with the team that helped put it together. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
You mentioned the zoning maps that are going to be electronic now.
Mm-hmm.
Are they available to citizens on the webpage? Can we post a digital copy of that somehow?
They will be. We have a program called AppGeo. So if you go to the town's website, you'll see mapping GIS. It'll be added as a layer to that. So if you're looking at your assessor's data, this will be a new layer to click on.
So it'll be addressable down to the street level, the address level?
Yes, exactly, right to the street, right to the parcel.
It'll identify wetlands and...
It'll still, right, if you go to the website now, you can find assessor data, environmental data, so you'll then now have this added function of having the zoning layer on it.
So it'd actually be working with the permitting department in some respects.
Right, yes.
Interesting.
Are there dates surrounding the zoning? I.e., Mansfield Avenue where Roach Brothers is whatever it is.
Right.
Been that way since. Is there any of that type of information?
That's a good question. It won't immediately. Of course, all of that information we do have available through town meeting votes, but it wouldn't, at this point, we wouldn't have that, but it is something we could look into. It'd be a lot of research to look back throughout the town's history, but if the community felt that was important to know, maybe we would work on putting something together.
Okay.
It might be worthwhile to look at least for like X number of years, like the changes that have been made in the last 10 years, for example, the changes at Leonard Street that we made last year. Just so people have an idea that, you know, oh, I thought I was zoned residential, but I actually am zoned village commercial, and I don't remember when that changed.
Right.
Paul?
Just to point out that it all changed since 1967 because we didn't have a zoning law before then. At all. We had no zoning.
Well, that makes it somewhat easier.
So don't go back to 66.
So you don't have to go back
much,
300 years,
not
that's
much.
good.
But we can certainly look into some of the zoning cases.
And the zoning we got then was remarkable. Just say remarkable.
Walter?
Can you give us any highlights of the successes of the current 20-year development plan that's wrapping up now? Anything in particular stand out as, you know, worked out good for the town that people should know about?
It's a great question, and I you know, it's not something I've specifically looked at in its context, but certainly one of the things when you read the town master plan is strong environmental protections that were identified. And when you look at the town efforts that the Conservation Commission has, a lot of land, environmentally sensitive land has been purchased. We have, you know, some, you know, fairly stringent environmental laws. But we really, you know, going forward, we want to look at, and working with the community, like just talking to the community about the village center and some of the dichotomy of opinions, even in that small area. You know, if you run from my experience, if you run a pretty broad public participation, we will be surprised by some of the answers, and you know, we will not see 100% consensus on anything. So, you know, that'll be something that really will be, I think, will be a really important tool for, you know, this board and all the other boards to hear what did the public say, because people, not everyone comes out to a public meeting, and if we ask them questions that are more aspirational about what they would like to see, then, you know, that'll certainly produce some interesting results. And then later on, as we develop the plan, to make sure we captured it right, because that will end up. One of the things I should point out about the master plan that I really want to emphasize is the implementation of it, because a plan that doesn't have a taking action component to it usually ends up sitting on the shelf. And so I was talking with our contact over at Southeastern Regional, SERPID, and you know, we're of the same opinion. In my experience, when I worked for the city of Austin, Texas, and one of the things that was a real success of the comp plan, what we call a comprehensive plan there, master plan here, is you have to lay out the game plan for getting things done. Who's going to do what and by when, and it's that. So we want to make sure that if we have recommendations to change our zoning bylaws, what will we be looking at? So if we want to change other provisions, if there could even be recommendations for capital investments. That's frequently a way in which you implement a master plan, is spending. So that'll be really critical.
So Norton will have something like South by Southwest in how many years?
5.
Okay.
You know, it's going on right now.
I know.
Wish I were back there, but
One other thing, is the work going on in the center of town, the proposals next Wednesday, is that moving forward independent of the new master plan?
it is independent of it, but we will have to wrap that plan into the master plan. Considering, you know, it'll be such a new plan, though it's typical, if you have fairly new plans, when you're creating an overall master plan, you take those plans into consideration because someone else went through that process and developed it, so absolutely. And that's true of other plans, like recently the open space master plan was done. So, we can look at that and use a lot of that information to help us out.
But they can proceed independently, is what you're saying?
Yes, right. Frequently, a comprehensive, or master plan actually can get implemented by other more specific plans, like an open space plan, a housing plan, a recreational plan. But the master plan's really the umbrella. And you could do certain things with it, but you really would count on other plans to get to specific areas like recreation or housing, or even transportation. Hi.
Will the costs of these proposals to reconfigure the center of town be part of your presentation?
The cost will not be, because we haven't, the funding paid for more of the general aspects. We need to figure out how to pay for the engineering aspects of it. So, the big issue obviously is 123 and 140. And we don't have, an option that is an absolute win-win, an obvious win-win. We were looking at a few different options. The two that received the most amount of support was realigning Mansfield Ave to align with Taunton Ave, and conversely realign Taunton to align with Mansfield. The challenge is they both have trade-offs. One could take several properties, and we'd have to figure out, do we have the will to do that, and do we have the funding to do it? The other would potentially go through the park. And again, same issue there. We would be able to get more land, but we would certainly be impacting a historic park, which is, always a difficult thing to do. So that's one of the things, but we do not have the cost estimates of that yet. We will have to, again, work with our consultant to see how we can find the funding, because that's pretty extensive engineering work. But we'll also be looking at, the zoning for that area. That's one of the things that's coming out of it. So we won't be able to immediately get to resolving the transportation, but we can more quickly make some changes in the future on the zoning regulations for that area. So we'll get some benefits out of it, and we'll have to continue to really look at the 140, 123 intersection.
No idea yet how much it's going to cost or how we pay for it?
No, not yet. It took a while even just to get those options identified, and then really figure out how can you address the challenges that they all present. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next budget is Selectmen's budget, and this is the first year back with a full-time person. And so that's reflected in the salaries, and the expenses are the same except for an additional 200 under seminars and conferences, so that the secretary can attend seminars that they have on licensing. And the next budget is town manager's budget. 2 staff people, myself and my assistant. And the expenses have not changed drastically. $250 increase in expenses. And Finance Committee, $1,410, same as appropriated last year.
So here's a dumb question. How much, well, let me back up. Would it benefit the Finance Committee to, say, have email addresses into the town hall? Would it benefit us in any way, shape, or form to have computers? You know, any of that kind of stuff?
It would benefit everyone to have computers. If we could have, do away with paper and have, but it's just a matter of purchasing tablets for everybody, really.
What about first step of?
And even emails, like selectmen don't even have town emails. They have their own personal emails.
Okay.
But that's something we want to look at maybe this year, in the fall. At least start with the selectmen and maybe even the planning board and see about tablets. And I know, like from the MFN, we just use tablets. We download everything in Dropbox and.
Yep. Or would even establishing like a Dropbox that we could then just reach into on our own
That might
stuff.
be able to be set up. I know that Paul does that with the planning board, so I'll talk to him about how that's set up.
Just a thought.
Yep. And then accounting, no change in staff, just salaries, contractual salaries and benefits. Then the annual audit, a slight increase from $24,500 to $25,000 this year. And then the expenses going from $3,635 to $3,750, just a slight increase. And that's under his book binding. He's required to have hard copies of everything. Legal services, just requesting the same, $70,000. As we say every year, we never know what we're going to be hit with, but it's $70,000 is usually a pretty good estimate on that.
And this year so far hasn't been bad?
No. Next year is a negotiation year, so it could be a little higher. So we're in our last year of the contracts, coming up July 1. Then zoning board, they just have a small budget, $300 for supplies. Municipal building, last year's request appropriation was $240,600. This year I'm requesting $220,900. And as you talked about earlier, the bulk of that, last year we requested $90,000 for electricity, and it came in at $60,000. So I've reduced that by $15,000.
So have short of the numbers, but the cost of electricity goes up and down all the time. Do we know how much we're saving with these lights and?
I know what was estimated by the company that converted them over, but I can't I could tell you from their report what they'd figure that we're saving on these.
Okay.
And just another sheet I wanted to go over with you. You had asked, so the bad news is the estimated operating revenue and expenditure sheet, based on all the requests. Paul had asked last week, well, what do these all add up to? And right now, the requests from the general government and the schools each is about 6.5%, which leaves us with a deficit of $1,484,480. So those are where we got to work towards cuts. And a simplistic approach, if you cut both of them to 3% increases, you probably have a balanced budget. So that's the area we're working in.
Okay.
Mike, just to be clear, this $1.5 million to be cut, this is from the requests.
Right, I hate to say, you're right, I hate when government says they're cutting. We're cutting requested increases.
Right. We've had a lot of people come before us and
Right.
tell us, that we need new highway, we need, additional
Yep,
highway.
yep,
personnel.
no, that's a good point.
Libraries get, things coming down the road. This does not represent $1.5 million in diminished services.
Right.
This is from the requests that the departments have put in.
Right.
This is a wish list.
Because, and if you look at appropriated last year, $56,644,000, the request right now is $59,769,000, so the requests are a lot higher than last year's budget.
If I did my math right, I could be wrong, the total operating revenue, which is the money we're taking in, is only going up 2.22%.
Right.
Okay. That's how much more money we have this year. Is any of those an estimate?
Now, well, the estimates,
Local aid?
well, the three you have to look at, overlay, we don't know that yet. That's just an estimate. And also the sewer and water reimbursements, those are at the same as last year because their reimbursements are based on what percent of the total town budget they are.
Yeah.
So those get adjusted at the end. Could go up, could go down.
New growth can change too.
Like, what about,
Okay.
And new growth could change too in the fall. Yep.
Local aid can change.
is there any hard numbers with insurance yet?
No, nothing hard yet. Just the health insurance.
So I know I'm jumping the gun. I asked this of you in private,
Well, it's about, we're almost there anyways, so.
but, with the wish list, with, hey, we want a senior center, hey, we want a town hall, all the contracts expiring, have the CPAs done any type of projection to see, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years? You can kind of guesstimate growth. You're going to guesstimate expenses with contracts and everything, where we sit 1 year out, 2 year out, 3 years out. Because I think this just looking so short kind of does a disservice to get the message out, how good or how bad our situation is. I truly think we need to be able to tell, in a year and 2 years and 3 years, here comes the cliff. Or there is no cliff. I don't know.
Well, we're in the 10th year of,
Expansion.
and so sooner or later, that's gonna,
Yeah.
Are we yet at our diminishing local receipts because we're affluent? When is that gonna stop being
We've already done it.
less and less? Are we like finally at the less and less and less where?
what do you mean for
You
the
know how, like,
state?
a few years ago from
Yeah.
the state, we considered more affluent, so they were gonna give us a little less each year till we got down to what they thought we should get. Are we at what they thought we should get?
I can't
You can't
I
say.
can't figure out that formula that the state has.
There was some formula.
They're actually talking about revising Chapter 70 formula now. Whether that helps or will hurt us
Devil
more,
you know or the
we'll-
devil you don't.
We'll never know.
If they followed the plan that they originally, when we were originally notified,
Yes.
we should be by now down.
Down to-
Where we aren't going down anymore.
Okay.
But they dropped us a whole notch because we became more, as you said, more
More
affluent. Therefore, we got a lesser percentage of state aid.
Right.
And of course, state aid fluctuates every year too, and local receipts do. And a lot of these things you don't, in fact, I think the best way you can project is not so much making guesstimates about what the legislature and so forth will do in the future, is to look at the last 5 years and say,
Right.
overall, what has happened to local receipts? What's happened to new growth? What's happened to all of these things? That probably gives you, I would guess, a better way of projecting than
Right.
doing any other kind, is to take an
Right.
average of the last
Exactly.
last
That's all you can do is take an
10
average.
years and say, that's the best we can go on, knowing that the whole lot of these things are totally changeable every single year.
And with when you do an average like that, with the local receipts, so the year we got the big hit from
Yeah,
Island,
you
you
know-
take that one out.
You know
average.
that, exactly, yeah. You have a little more sense of what was,
Right.
where the anomalies were that you wouldn't want to figure into the.
Yeah.
But it gives you a much, I want to say a much better picture, but it gives you a picture. And it's a little longer than 12 months.
Yeah.
We have to be concerned with 12 months, but you hear all this chatter about we want to do this, we want to do that, and we spend money on researching feasibilities, this, that, and the other thing. If it's not feasible, though, in 3 years to fund it, then why are we spending that money today when we have so many other needs? But we can't, or no one has shown to me where we're going to be. So no one can make that judgment.
I think the best way is looking backwards.
And it's, go ahead.
The only two on terms of this, the only two figures that I think we've got absolutely certain here are the first two, the base tax levy and the increment. Those we know, they aren't going to change. Everything else in there could change. Now, a lot of them aren't going to change by much, but there could be change up or down. And some of them we don't know. For example, local receipts, we don't know until June 30th, long after town meeting in May, what the final figure is. In fact, that's often where some of our extra money for the fall town meeting comes in. If the local receipts eventually show up to be larger than we had planned on. But it's a crapshoot.
Just to give you an idea where we are now, those are the local receipts. So it's a double-sided, because you had asked me, I think you had asked me about the local receipts, and you get the monthly reports from the,
And James,
right?
Right.
So you'll
Yes.
have that.
you do see that.
You can see where people are at. In the local receipts, just keep in mind when you review it that March is when all the auto excise comes in.
Yep.
So you look at auto excise now and you'll be wondering, well, why is it so low? Well, it all comes in March.
Right.
The bulk of it. And some of the things, increased interest rates, and the treasurer's doing a great job in investments because we're at 88,000 in our interest, and that's pretty good. Our estimate was 60, so she's done a good job on that. And licenses and permits are doing well also. we're already above what our estimate was for the year. And hopefully, all the,
Is this-
go ahead.
Is this the same thing on each side? They keep flipping it back and forth.
Is it the same?
Yeah.
No,
Trying to
one
figure out what it
side, one side, if you look, has year-to-date collected, and then it shows collected through that same period last year.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other side just shows this year and the percent collected of what we estimated we were going to collect so far,
Okay.
and the variance to budget. So the one comparing this year to last year, that's a pretty good indicator to look at. Because then you'll see, like motor vehicle excise, we're about the same as we were last year, $2,000 less as of now, $2,800 less. So if you have any questions on that, just let me know. I can answer them at the next meeting. And did you have a tentative agenda for the next meeting in your? Okay.
Signed it and gave it to Pat.
All right, great.
We'll post it tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Mike, when we have the next meeting, who's coming before us the next meeting?
Schools.
Water and sewer.
Water and sewer. And I'll be doing the communications budget.
And even though, based on the January report, communications is pretty much out of overtime, is there a staffing, someone get injured?
Well, we're trying to hold on. We have another year to go. And obviously, if someone's working there and an opportunity comes up.
Yep.
I think what may help us starting this spring, July 1, but I'm not sure when they're actually going to start hiring people. Foxborough and Mansfield are joining. So whoever doesn't get hired out of those two towns will be available to come. So we should have 9, and we just hired a full-time person. We have 1 vacancy, or 2 vacancies still we're trying to fill, and we just hired a per diem to fill in when someone else won't take a shift.
To follow up on the chairman's question, or loosely tie to this bill, we've got this $1.5 million that we've got to, kind of remove from these requests, and as people have come before us, they, a lot of them seem like things that, if we're not going to deal with them now, they're going to have to get dealt with eventually. We also have a lot of plans going on, the center of town, or town hall, and a senior center, and these kinds of things. And I'm just wondering, given where we are with what seem like some pretty reasonable requests coming from departments in terms of the highway, the library, and the additional expenditure that they're going to, they're requesting that they may or may not, likely, apparently not get. Is there any promise of or possibility of any of these projects that we're talking about happening in town actually happening? And if so, how do we get to the point where we can actually do that? And how would they be funded? Would we be talking about like
It's called 2.5 override.
Yeah, debt exclusion.
My goal coming in was to get Tom to say the words.
Just let me interject one thing. All kidding aside, I heard Bill say, when are we falling off the cliff? We fell off the cliff 10 years ago when we started to use everything free cash and not bank it, okay? We didn't address the problem 10 years ago, so here we are 10 years later, me and Paul 10 years older, you know, reaching our end, our expiration date's coming up. Ouch. I don't care if you go out, I don't care if you go out and project 5 years out. Unless we do something, unless we can print money, which we can't, we're not going to get off, falling off the cliff. I mean, it just goes off over and over and over.
But my point is, if we could eloquently, succinctly,
Tell people to pay more money?
no, just give the information,
Illustrate it.
illustrate it, thank you.
Sure.
Then, that's all we can do, is here's the information, this is what's gonna happen, make a choice what you want this town to be. But right now, we're kind of in that cloud of, well, maybe,
Well-
not sure.
Let's go back and read the town reports that we submit and the little verbiage, I'm sorry, we put in the front of the report.
But that,
Every one of them says, the only way we're gonna get out of this hole is we need more refund, we need more funding.
but
every one of
but
them.
everybody, if you talk to certain sides of this town, they say, show me. So I want someone to show me. Put it in paper.
You know what shows you is what we did back a few years ago, when you dialed 911, somebody
no one
said,
was there.
Attleboro, okay? And that's exactly what we did. That showed them. Did we get an override to do anything different?
No.
Absolutely not.
Just,
Not everybody calls 911.
just to answer Aaron.
You have a question?
So just to remember, any project that water or sewer does, that's out of water and sewer receipts that are paid by the ratepayers. So that doesn't affect what we're doing budget-wise.
You
So,
mentioned not all water and sewer expenses are done through that enterprise account with,
they are,
everything water and sewer is.
yep. Has to be. Everything for water and sewer is done out of the enterprise account. The bike trail will be funded by the state. The Route 123 project is funded by the state. We're looking now on putting traffic signals down at North and South Worcester.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have a contract.
Preferably before my children can drive. Thank you.
We have a contract to do engineering on that, and that's coming out of Chapter 90, so that's not coming out of budget money. And then that'll get on the tip to be funded by the state, because it's a state road.
Supposed to be a light at Roach Brothers?
That,
Forever and a day.
they've talked about it, but there'll be a traffic signal there. There'll be one on North and South Washington, and then there'll be traffic signals at the off-ramps, and that's all being funded on the tip. As far as the town hall and community center project, that'll have to be funded like the high school project was. It will have to be a debt exclusion. And anyone that is interested, March 20th at 7 o'clock at the high school auditorium, they're going to have a informational session, the building committee, on that project. Also at 6 o'clock, if anyone's interested, there'll be an information session on what the stretch code means, because that's something we're looking at in the spring. There's an article to adopt the stretch code. The stretch code is has building project, new construction, not small additions or things like that on your house, but new construction will require standards be met to cut down on the energy usage of new projects. And the state's going to adopt it soon, I think, all across the state anyways. So that's another step in becoming a green community. But, so as far as the budget, none of those projects should have, there shouldn't be any impact out of the budget. And the other thing we may talk about and look at maybe is if there's some way that window project can get put on a debt exclusion, because that's going to be $300,000 to $400,000 a year in payments, so.
But go back to what Tom was saying. You can do debt exclusion for particular things, but what we really need, and the cutback that we got from the state because we, quote unquote, became more affluent, you couldn't convince anybody in town that we'd become more affluent. But we went down 4 or 5 percentage points in terms of the amount of state aid we got. What you have to have is something that can be applied generally to budgets. I mean, this is the hard thing, and I think it was, to me, it seemed more evident this year in these budgets that you presented to us. I don't think there was a request I heard here that was unreasonable or out of line or didn't reflect something that the town really needed as it grew. And it's beginning to grow again because the economy has been good enough long enough. But, it's the same thing every year. You do what you can, and everybody's a little short-staffed, and then there's really capital gain things you need to do. And if you haven't got the money, and we haven't had the money, you apportion it as evenly and as best, and that's what our job is. Our job is to say, we can say we haven't got enough. We really got a lot of things we would like to recommend. But this is what we got, and this is the way we think. This is what we put our stamp on in terms of what we think is the best way to spend this money. Not that we don't need more, not that there aren't other things that could be done. And I don't know how you get out of this. And, go back to what he said.
Seems like, we give our, our recommendation or approval as a committee to the decisions that town manager makes in that regard.
Well, there have been times when there have been some amendments, let's put it that way. But believe me, I started on this committee when there was no town manager, there was no fiscal manager, there was nothing. And this committee met during budget season 3 nights a week from 7 o'clock till 11 o'clock, and we put the whole damn budget together. The good side of it was there was no 2.5, there was no nothing else. So we put a budget together, we gave it to the selectmen, who didn't do much to put it together. If they approved it, then that's what went to town meeting, and we could vote any amount we wanted as long as we were willing to pay the taxes on it. There was no 2.5 holding us to limits or things, and there were far less state mandates about how we should spend our money this way and that way. I mean, we're I'm not saying they're bad, but we've got an awful lot of those kinds of things now that didn't exist then. So the good side of it was that we could vote whatever budget the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen recommended, which we generally did. We tried to keep it as low as possible, obviously, but now it's different, and thank God, because I'll tell you, trying to put, as the town was growing in the 70s and in the 70s particularly, and we had a bigger wave of inflation and everything else, putting those budget together was just horrendous for all of us who were not particularly trained in it at all. And the best thing we ever did was to go to a town manager form of government and to bring in somebody and to bring in a real accountant, not just a local person who liked numbers. Because think if we tried to put all of this together now, no way we could do it. No way we could do it at all.
I'm not suggesting we would. I think that I think the point I'm trying to emphasize is also an emphasis, I think, of the point that Tom was making, which is that we've acknowledged as a board or as a committee that we need an override, but we do it in a very muted way. We seem to, it only ever comes up in that paragraph, in our annual summary. Right, that's the, so who are we reaching with that message?
Anybody who looks
who are
at
the
the
12
report.
people we're reaching with that message?
Well, that document also doesn't come out till when?
Next month.
Right, so.
Well, but you have to start to move for an override in the fall if you want to get it in place in the spring. I mean, it's not something you can wait and start in now.
And I'm certainly not suggesting that we start, handing out signs or printing T-shirts. But I think that as we look forward to getting this town what it needs over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we do need to find a way to be clear to the people of this town that a increase in revenues is going to be necessary. If that's what we believe, which according to our annual summary it is, we've got to start to try to figure out how to get that message out more effectively, because we're not doing a good job.
Well, and in addition to that, if we're talking about the idea of debt exclusions for new buildings, an operational override to alleviate budget issues, we're also at some point all going to start having the pleasure of paying for the new water treatment plant through our water and sewer rates, and the sewer expansion down 123 if you have the pleasure of having sewers. So that's a lot on the people that live in this town coming to a head kind of all at once. And I think that we're going to have to be thoughtful and strategic about how and what we push for, because I don't see all of this being possible. I mean, we tried to go for what I am assuming was much smaller numbers than what the numbers are we're going to be looking at going forward, and it got shot down twice in a row. So I completely understand where you're coming from. I'm just not sure how we get there.
Well, I don't think we're doing anyone a service by allowing a crisis to become a major surprise in 3 years.
Well, bad news never improves with age. That's clear.
I don't think this is going to be a crisis that becomes bigger and bigger in 3 years, but I think it's always going to be there. We do things, we get some things done every year, but there's more that replaces it. And the thing is, too, I think some of us who, all of us are involved. We know what's going on in town. We have a sense of the various departments. But I have had, in the past 2 or 3 months, people in town say, why in hell, I'm not going to vote for any overrides as long as we have a recreation department. Why the hell do we need to spend money on recreation? 2 different people have said, never going to support an increase to the school department. You know why? Because they had the money to put that sign up in the front that, is like the one we got out front here. We got the money to do those things. Don't tell me we need more money. They put one up in front of the school here, and they put one in front of the school. If they got money to pay for that, now. I mean, and these are people who go to town meeting, by the way. So letting them know depends on what they see as being an appropriate expenditure to begin with,
Right.
what we should be spending money on. And, you get a lot of that, well, we didn't do this when I was in school and I got a perfectly good education. I think some of that is because town meeting is proportionately more heavily populated by, you're not supposed to say these words the other day, the elderly.
I don't know who that would be.
I didn't say that.
But it's that's what makes it difficult to get out and to say to people. Just telling them that, depending on what their point of view is about government or about various departments or about various services, it may not make a damn bit of difference.
Well, I don't see it the way you just said it, because town meeting more or less approved what budgets came to. It wasn't like people stood up and fought against.
Oh, I'm talking about overrides.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right.
I'm talking about the special.
Right.
No, they. I think they've long since given up. I mean, they all expect that they were going to go up that 2.5%. That the proposition 2.5 allows. Nobody challenges that anymore. They did in the beginning, but they don't now.
Right.
But beyond that.
And the state aid is the increase we get is peanuts now. So
Yeah,
and
minuscule.
as Peter was saying, it's our 2.5, our new growth, and our local receipts. That's all we really can count on. The state aid was about $90,000 or something like that, and
Yeah. But if we were still at the old state
Paul,
aid.
Tom, since you guys have been around a long time, and Rick, just to make sure you pay attention for that mix.
Whoa.
Yikes.
Is there a kind of trickle going on over the course of more years than I've been involved here, where, 4 or 5 years ago, we're looking for money, a little additional money for the schools, and we're trying to pass an override for that. We're trying to reopen Chartley. And now we've got, as we all kind of agree, $1.5 million of what seem like pretty reasonable requests coming from the highway department, the inspection department, the assessors, the fire department. Is that now all piled on top of the $1.5 million, on top of things that we already didn't take care of?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably
So
60.
and maybe crisis was a bit of a strong word, but I mean,
Not even more.
does our list of problems keep growing as we continue to not deal with them as they come up?
Let's take the override we had.
Kicking the can down the road?
We are. We're
We
kicking
are.
the can down. Matter of fact, I don't think we have the can anymore. I think we
Can't even see it anymore, Tom.
Can's
It's so
gone.
far down the road.
Okay, let's just approach the override we had for the school that went down, okay? It went down because everybody was at the meeting, voted for it. It was unanimously approved, that override. Let's go get it, great. Well, all their peers were around. When they went into the booth, they said, gee, that's gonna cost me $200 a year more. You gotta be kidding. No. So that's the mindset. We sit here and we say, this is the best we can do with what we have. We'd like to have an override. That's great. Go to town meeting, they'll vote for it. But when it comes time to put it in your cash register, let's say, my God, I'm already paying this, now I'm gonna pay this plus this. That's the bottom line.
Because an override has to go to a ballot as well.
Yeah, the town-
It has to be voted by town meeting.
We've only had one override in this town. Unfortunately, I was the chairman at the time. The debt exclusion.
The debt
We
exclusion.
had one debt exclusion, okay? I mean, you got it, right. It was our 300th anniversary. We had our first debt exclusion override, okay? That was a mammoth for this town. Since 2.5's been in place for a lot of years.
We were proud we never voted one.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it became a matter of great
And even
pride.
then, I mean, that wasn't gigantic,
But,
but it was more money, okay? And
so, after what we've all discussed has been 10, 11 years of pretty steady economic expansion, a good economy, we're $1.5 million in the hole from what every department head in this town has said they think they need for next year. What happens if we have another major economic downturn, another catastrophic something, housing bubble?
Your biggest expense here is personnel.
Right.
So what happens?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I can tell you what can happen.
We know what
Because we had one year where for a lot of reasons that I won't go into here, the school, we didn't pay the state, and so we didn't get any state aid at all. And we suddenly, and the police chief became the acting town manager.
That was back in January of 1993.
Yeah, and we cut the police department. We cut it by over a third. We cut the fire department by a third, and the police chief, acting town manager, he said, "I do whatever you have to do. We'll do the best we can with whatever you give us." That was his attitude. There was and that was not because of the economy. It was because of a fiscal gap, which in the long run, we got the money back from the state. But what they did is they didn't give us the money that they were giving us to aid for building the middle school 1 year. They tacked it on to the payments at the end, which is still coming up. In other words, we're going to get payments for the middle school 1 year more than we were supposed to, but there was a year back there where all of a sudden we had to make the payments to the builders, but we didn't get the state aid for building the school. And we just cut, everything got cut, everything got closed down, or shadow of what it had been. And then the next year, we could go back, sort of. And then we went about, yeah, 93. When was there? Yeah, it was 93, about then.
Barman was closed for nights back in
Yep.
1991.
But, you know, that's what you do. If we really do go over the cliff, and we went over the cliff that year, and that's what we did. We ran a police department that was cut by a third. We had nobody on duty in the police department at the desk or anything. We had the ones we had out in the field. And fire rescue was down to, was
4 o'clock, we shut it down.
yeah, it shut down.
4 o'clock.
Unmanned at night, yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Got out of
So that's what happens.
Right.
We've got our own case example of it.
And do you have any idea roughly what the population of this town was in 1993?
Probably,
Peter.
75 to 8,000.
no,
it was more than that.
It was a lot more than that at that
It's like
point.
16,000?
15,000.
No, we're only at 19.
Yeah, that's about right.
We're only
That's about right.
19,000 now,
15,
19.8
16.
right now.
Yeah, it was about 15, 16 then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when I moved here.
When I moved here, the population was just hitting 7,000, so. That was 1961. I've been working here for 4 years, but I didn't move to this great town. So with all of that,
Any conclusions? What are we doing now?
we're gonna try to listen to the town manager, who's gotta do the hard work, and see his recommendations, and decide if we want to juggle the money around a little bit.
Yep.
What else do we do?
That's what we pay him for.
I just don't wanna see us get to the point where the library can't be accredited and
Yeah.
or.
Did that too.
Or.
We did
Did
that
that
too, as you know, we did that too.
Well, no reason we should have to return to that. Or-
Absolutely.
Or the two guys on the highway department say, this isn't worth it anymore.
You know, I'm
There are small things that
Agreed.
creep up on us here if we're not able to.
I completely agree with you. It's hard to do.
Well, thank you, Mike.
All right?
Mike?
Have a nice evening.
At school, one of the best things I ever heard was your speech that you gave at the town meeting.
Oh, for the override?
For the override, and the way you finished it, because you say everybody is saying this, you know, this is a terrible time fiscally, and we can't do it now. And
If
and
not
you-
now, when?
And you said, there is no good time. There is never a good time to do a project of this type, ever.
Yeah.
And so, look at the situation we're in. It's as good as it's ever gonna be, which means it isn't good.
Right.
If not now, when?
That's
And
what I
unless you
said.
can answer the when concretely, we should do it now. And it went through, and that one went through at the ballot box time. Yeah, we lost the ballot box override earlier on a school.
But I still go back to, we're not illustrating it well enough to get to enough people. If an override is where you're ultimately heading, you need to give the information versus just, we need an override. Because there are so many people, show me why.
There-
I personally think if you show them why, it doesn't make a difference.
For some people,
are
it
gonna-
won't.
They already know they're not
Some.
gonna do an override. That's it. You can tell me all the things we need to know.
And you, having been through this as before a number of times, you have to be careful because we are not allowed by law to go out and campaign for an override.
I'm not,
We are just
say
allowed
making
to
people
provide
aware what's
the
happening.
information. Now, that information can
Right.
explain why we think it is necessary, but you
Try.
can get over the line and be proselytizing.
I don't
for it.
want to say yay or nay. I just want to say, here's the information. Make
No,
your,
well,
make
it's
your
our
decision.
duty to recommend that we do it or not do it. I mean, anything that involves finances. I mean, in this town, not in a lot of communities, but in this town, the finance committee, as we all know, has to recommend on every article, including non-fiscal articles about which we may know next to nothing. But we still have to recommend it one way or the other. And we have not always recommended what others wanted.
Mr. Chairman, does a list of services provided without an override and a list of services provided with an override as a simple presentation? I don't know how you get that onto one page when you're talking about exactly what you're getting out of the highway department, right?
We did two budgets, if you remember.
Or
That was
exactly what
somebody-
you're getting out of the
also
library.
somebody else brought it in.
Each of these have, a bit of information.
That's right, the blue budget.
But
I mean, it's,
we do need to put our minds to some sort of lucid.
right. But again, I'm not sure we have all the information beyond this coming year. And I think to do it, and to do it properly, you have to give the person listening a couple of years versus, oh, that's just this year, next year is gonna be better. Well, no, based on, or maybe, yes, it is gonna be better and it's a one-year, aberration and, we'll just have to tighten our belts for a year. But we don't have that information. And I've been asking for it.
I think that part of the other issue in perception around town is Paul's favorite thing, free cash, which is not cash and is also not free. But people think that that's money that we found, that somehow we didn't have this $1.5 million for the budget for Springtown meeting, but we somehow magically and mysteriously found the money for Fall Town meeting.
They don't understand.
And they don't understand how the process works. So they think that we cry Chicken Little, doom and gloom during the budget process, and then somehow in the fall we make it all work out. And it's great, but we can't do both.
Right.
So I think that we need to do some educating of people to help them understand where that money comes from, but it's a complicated thing. And I don't think it's like an easy thing to like whip into a soundbite like that and everybody gets it.
Didn't you guys do that last fall, spring? There was a meeting
Well,
here.
we had an educational
It was in June.
seminar
Yeah.
on the, responsibilities and the, how we meet, what our responsibilities function is, how we work within the town framework. And I think we had, actually, I don't know, maybe 12 or 14 people showed up. I don't know.
The room was full back there because I was hiding.
Yeah.
Bill Gouveia did the same kind of thing. He did his own little financial dog and pony show that I went to at one point, so. Bigger than just the finance.
Town Government 101.
Town Government 101.
Town Government 101.
Yeah. So, people have tried, and there's just a lot of resistance.
I don't think anybody wants to know when nothing else is happening. There's no impetus, there's no drive for information or interest. I mean, it's just, if you aren't trying to reach into my pocketbook right now, I'm not really paying attention. It's really a good percentage of people. People are busy, but people are also not interested.
I'm interested in this town. I go to all the meetings and I take notes and put on my Peter Channel Facebook page.
I'm certainly not talking about you, Peter.
We know that you're involved.
See, I was bored one night and I just put on the local, station. And someone was, bemoaning, I didn't know about the solar panel thing and blah, blah, blah. And it went on and on and on.
Planning board.
And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, we, as this committee, talked about it for a while. It was in our packets, but no one's ever here, except for Peter in the back, but no one's ever here. I'm sure the selectmen, when they're sitting here, that's probably pretty much empty. I felt sorry for the individual who was talking, but it's like, yeah, I'm busy too. I have a family too. you know, there are ways to get the information and not just sit there going, I didn't know.
Or put the onus on someone else to get the information. to
Yeah.
you. Exactly.
I don't know. Anyways, enough of that.
Struggles.
Next Monday is our next meeting.
Do you have any idea, the school department usually has its budgets someplace hidden here ahead of time. so
That
we-
was his number.
Hmm?
Got his number. That's the school department's number.
I was at their budget presentation at the school committee meeting last week.
Yeah, that's the
So the
number.
Budget's
budget is
approved.
prepared.
Yeah,
It's-
that's their number.
it was
If you
approved.
look at
Yeah.
the sheet that Mike gave us, that's the number.
Yeah, that number looks right.
28 or?
Yeah,
or-
the 30 million, because Joe stopped me in the
No.
hole a couple
I-
of weeks ago, said that 6.5%.
So I can reach out to them again and see if it's,
Well, no,
Zappable
usually
to us
they've had
ahead of
that
time.
notebook with their budget
they'll
in
give
it
us the whole
available
thing.
so that we can look at it.
I don't think they're gonna do that this year.
Well, they've done it for years, so I just.
Last
I
year,
got the impression that he's kind of over that.
so again, I'll reach out to say, hey, is there anything you can, you know, zap to me, PDF that I can zap out? So people can, you know, look at it ahead of time
Yeah.
and not just sit here that day going, huh?
Great to get on Friday.
Yeah, it was great to get him Friday.
Nice to be able to look it over on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, what
Through
I'm
today.
glad you guys got it, because I didn't get it.
do you mean you didn't get
What?
Got it.
No, we use email.
email?
I looked at my email.
I'm gonna,
I tried to
Gotta get
open it
yourself
and
in
it wouldn't
trouble.
open.
Windows 3 is not compatible.
that could be the problem.
Do you have Adobe Reader?
I've almost got a 2-year-old Apple. I should damn well be able to do it.
Oh, he's got an Apple.
He's on the teacher side.
You
Not
are
sure.
on this email.
Yeah, right?
Anyway,
Yeah.
Mr.
I
Halpern.
looked for it. And I got something and I
says-
tried to open it.
Draft materials.
You might need to download the app to read it with.
What's an app? I'm serious. My wife takes
We
care of
used to
apps.
call
I
them
don't,
i-
I don't
ask
have an
her.
Apple
Back in the
phone.
day,
It's a PDF.
they were an icon. Now they're an app.
Ask your wife, because it's a PDF,
Yeah, you need.
and you have to be able to open it, so.
Can I steal this?
On an Apple,
You need
I'm not
Adobe
sure.
Reader.
I think I can. I just couldn't get that one.
He's already got Adobe in it, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah, but it might, yeah, the-
On a Macintosh, it's called Preview, it's built into the OS.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
I got it. I know I
you
can.
I'm just gonna open
If that's what it is, I should be able to open it.
Or you
Right.
you can download Adobe Reader from the App Store.
I've got that. I have
I
the
wrote it for
Adobe
you.
Reader already in there.
well, is it up to date?
It comes built.
All hasn't been up to date for years.
It's built in. He's got a Mac.
Yeah, but they
He doesn't have these
update.
issues.
I haven't used a Mac since I was in high school.
Anyways, all right, so next Monday, if I get the information ahead of time, I'll send it out.
If you don't.
Tell me if you can't read it, and maybe there's a different way I can
I'll-
save it
I'll
and then
stick
send
my
it out.
wife onto it. She knows about these things.
Nice.
That's
It
good.
keeps you informed.
So with,
On a need to
with
know.
that, oh,
Minutes.
hold on.
We have it.
Look.
Guys almost escaped without it.
Did you say you needed a copy of Windows?
thank you.
No.
No, 2 minutes.
March, didn't we do March? Didn't we do the 20?
Shorter meeting.
This is March 4th.
Did we do the 25th?
Wait, no.
25th. So
We did that last?
Okay.
Didn't we not? Or are there minutes?
Exactly.
This is what keeps us here.
We did that last one.
It is fun at times.
That's it.
Might be like in the big gym.
In the packet.
You confused me.
Let's see.
Silva.
Do we already read these once?
Which ones?
These are from last
minutes?
week.
I don't know if I was late last week, but I think I was
I thought-
times.
I don't
Yeah.
have you-
I was late once.
I think it was Mike that was late last week. Was it?
I'm not moving anything. I gotta.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It doesn't bother me.
First page, I think the name is Silva, not Silver.
Yeah, Silva.
Okay, thank you. Silva.
Keith Silva.
Oh, it's silver.
No,
Yes.
yes, Keith Silver.
Silver.
Yep.
It is silver.
Yeah.
If you look on his budget, it's silver.
It is.
Okay.
Boy, I didn't
Let's
think.
take a vote.
Oh, I don't know.
I think you got.
I've debated that for years.
Hold on.
I will look and see.
Actually, I was absent for this meeting.
Was I sleeping?
I always
No,
thought.
he
It's
was.
cut paste, it's okay.
Are you sure you were not here last?
You have it?
He was not here
Unless
last
when
week.
you're sneezing. And then,
Absent, all right, so Walter, I'll put you down here. Pete, I'll take you off as
Might
being
as well-
late, that
yeah,
was
might as
the
well
week
make it
before.
look I'm not late, yeah, might as well, right?
Or I'll just make you late every week. Let me cut and paste this.
get a reputation, just for minutes.
Going there, yeah.
Silver,
Highway Department, did you, is it silver?
it is silver.
It's a great name.
Yeah.
Way up
And I thought it was Silva with an A.
I think so. Still bet on that. Should go get a town report.
I just saw a typo on page 2. It's not. We're using cars and many of the guys, not Moni.
Well, they're using the electric cars.
Right. But I spelled it wrong. so-
Right.
I believe liens also is Liens, under that paragraph about inspection.
Okay, thank you.
Sulfur,
Okay. Both Tom and I were wrong.
Number 141, assessors,
Mm-hmm.
personnel services, personal services,
Oh, yep.
personal services.
Well, that never happened.
Of late, yep.
Yeah, recently.
Yeah.
Should be she stated.
Personnel, thank you.
Should be she
I
stated.
wonder if I did that anyway.
He stated.
And Pat, the second sentence, he stated should be she stated
Which one?
on assessors.
He stated, okay, in his expenses, not
Yeah,
hers.
that's Mike, right?
Right,
And
it said
he
Mike
is
that was speaking,
requesting-
or Denise.
Yeah,
We
who- is
switched
that
gender
Mike?
halfway through there.
Well, he was
Wow.
talking about her,
Yeah.
His-
right? So
Mike
then
stated
there's no,
that it's like decreasing Denise's expenses, right?
Yeah,
Right,
okay.
right.
Okay.
it's tough.
You're missing the
Pronouns,
app.
you just never know.
So is it all right?
Yep.
Okay, never mind.
Does anybody remember what happened with all that data processing discussion we had and the lack of backups and, on town records. That was a big issue, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago. Somebody came before us and was looking for some money to upgrade our backup mechanism because we didn't have one. Even the school records, the backups were not adequate. I remember hearing a resolution to that.
It was the school, wasn't it?
No, I thought extended to the town.
I think they have, their request of the capital for some of that.
Yeah.
I don't think capital.
So I just never heard that we bought anything or we upgraded the
Oh, we
schools,
could we
so.
approve some money
All
sometime,
right, I'll ask for that.
maybe in the fall for,
With, under maturing debt and the questions about our bond rating, I think I remember that conversation, what would help our bond rating, number 2? And is the increase by $5,000 per year to keep our current rating, was that to
that's OPEB.
OPEB?
That's
It's not,
OPEB.
it's just not mentioned.
We
but-
need to increase OPEB more than $5,000 a year, I think is what she said.
Well, she can say it.
I just
No,
thought, I just thought, OPEB, even though it's a bad word.
I
just
think
thought-
she said 5,000 would,
Well, that's what we,
Make them
that's what
happy.
we have done, and,
Right.
and it's gotten us by.
right.
So do I need to change something?
OPE,
OPEB.
OPEB.
My point was just that OPEB is not mentioned. so it
OPEB?
seems
Yes.
as-
Yeah, OPEB.
So would you want me to put that in there?
Yeah, just to
Just to
clarify.
know what in reference, the $5,000 is in reference to.
Yeah.
So we need to increase OPEB by $5,000 per year to keep our current rating.
This amount would increase.
Gotcha.
Well, there's no guarantee. I mean,
Right,
you
yeah,
get,
exactly.
you get a rating, a whole lot of things.
Yes.
Debate.
If they see that we are putting something in and it's a little more each year, they'll be
I know,
satisfied.
I
with it.
debated it myself.
I'm satisfied. Yes, the whole thing. You know, a percentage point, or half.
It's not
Right,
that-
I don't think so,
It's
yeah.
just if they're not doing their accounts, if you're doing it, you're doing it. And, you know,
Right.
Wellesley did the whole damn thing in one big override.
Because they can pass an override. for-
Wellesley can afford that kind of stuff.
On the last one on page 4, about the health reimbursement accounts, I think it should read, it may continue if contracted again, not it will continue, because it depends on the contract negotiation.
Well, it says if contracted
Right.
again.
It will continue.
It will continue if contracted again.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see either way.
February spelled wrong. I just noticed February spelled wrong.
What?
February. On page 5. Famous mistake of leaving that first R out.
Oh.
Oh. I read them before I print them, but it's,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Did
who seconded that?
Paul?
Thank you, Paul. You abstain? Because you weren't here, even though I had you in the minutes.
Now, anybody who took minutes back to January of 18. It's all been given, Pat?
Yeah, this is one that was done here.
Now, Amy, did you override one? Okay. I can look them up. I just wanted to make sure before I did it.
Oh, no, they were in the meeting minutes before town meeting, so they are not on video.
No, right. Town meeting, so that's why there's one other I need to get.
Probably still have the handwritten notes from that meeting. I could probably recreate them.
I may have. If they were passed out at that point,
I typed them up, but then when I had to do another set, I opened them because the template was all there.
With nothing else?
I wrote them.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
It auto-saved.
Having a motion and a second to adjourn. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Yeah, 85% of the time.